Okay, so I think
Dr.
everyone,
Patrick, you have
yes, can everyone hear me and can you see my screen?
Yes,
Great,
Dr. Patrick. Thank you.
great. Okay, well, thank you very much once again for the warm welcome and really excited to be here, everyone. It really is a great honor and yeah, I look forward to hearing what everyone else has to say as well. And as we discussed there in the intro, what are we talking about? We're talking about AI, and of course, AI is such a big topic, by the way. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I'm sure everyone in this room, especially when it comes to veterinary medicine, has sort of different ideas about what that actually means, and I think this is a big thing that we talk about. And so hopefully today and tomorrow can give you a little bit more information and insight into sort of what it actually means, practically what does it mean and where are we going? And I think it's such a sort of thing that is not hangs over us, but that we're, everyone's talking about it all the time, whether it's in veterinary medicine or otherwise. So I won't repeat sort of what was on the info there, but this is my little thing here. I grew up in the States and I worked for a little over 5 years as a clinical veterinarian in Australia, Dubai, and the Netherlands, until realizing that really tech and innovation was where my passion lay, but still with that sort of animal health lens. And yeah, these days with AI, but also other advancements in software and digital tools, I mean, it's a really, really exciting time to do this. There's so much happening, everything's happening so fast. And really, it's like yeah, it's just a very, very interesting. But, what, the veterinary industry, um, and this is what we're going to talk about today. The veterinary industry, I'm sure most of the people in here, is a tough one. It requires a lot from the vets who are working, sort of long hours, weird hours, work-life balance, being busy, missing dinners with your family, this kind of stuff. And I think everyone would agree here that at least every vet I speak to, no matter what country it is, we're all very, very busy. And this takes a toll on top of sort of rising pressures, whether it's from the production side, whether it's pet owners, the classic pets being part of the family, and wanting that human level care, but not knowing what goes into, human level health care for their pets. Um, and yeah, so there's a lot of pressures on vets right now. Owners or farmers, come into the room with the ChatGPT printout instead of Dr. Google. And like we said, it's a times are a changing in a sense. So it's keeping up and knowing is becoming more and more difficult, and there's more and more pressures. And so what we're trying to do from a high level point of view is, I guess, use the information we have with the in the most sort of efficient and effective manner to get the tools and the information to the people who need them as quickly as possible. And so yeah, so certainly today we're going to talk a little bit about the profession itself and the pressures we're facing. We're going to go through that pretty quickly. But then for sure, veterinary medicine, we have sort of human medicine that we can look at. And obviously human medicine tends to be a little bit in front of vet medicine, although with the speed of AI and AI advancements and AI assisted enhancements of other software, that gap is absolutely shortening. I mean, a lot of the tools that we're going to talk about today didn't even exist, for human or vets, 2 years ago, let's say, which is just an insane speed if you think of other tools like radiograph machines or ultrasound machines or something like that. And then, of course, we're going to talk about more specific veterinary AI stuff and sort of practically what that actually can mean. So the profession, and particularly for Africa, we are talking about um, animal health in Africa here, is that, as I'm sure you guys in the room could tell me yourselves, that things are changing very fast. We did go over this. Um, as I think one of our moderators said in the beginning, oh, the livestock, the production sector is rapidly growing, which of course requires that veterinary knowledge to, or that veterinary profession to grow with it. And that we want to keep up with the innovations and really bring it to the people all over need it. But this all takes effort and work, and I guess the systems to be in place to do this. On top of that, on top of the sort of production side, I'm sure if you happen to work with um, pet animals, that the demands are absolutely increasing there as well. My background is in companion animals, so I won't claim to be an expert in the production side of things, but that's actually one of the things I'm very excited to work with Vet Connect is to, sort of refine the tools or even build new tools for the production side of things in Africa. And yeah, and we talk about those expectations and the ability to bring higher level care to more animals, with sometimes, not more man hours. And as we mentioned at the top, the reality is really changing, or sorry, this is the reality for many vets. And again, I mean, think of this in your daily days. How often do you eat lunch? How often do you go home on time? And these things, they do take a toll on top of course, the compassion fatigue, decision-making fatigue, angry clients when things don't go right, all the fun parts. Um, and we know from stats all over the world that rates of, mental health or rates of burnout and all these kind of negative mental or quality of life and workplace things are generally worse for vets than they are for the normal population, and that they're getting worse, at rates that are worse than the general population. And so these are the kind of things that on top of just, better diagnostics, it's how can we make the actual quality of life better for your average veterinarian in Africa? And I think that's a pretty good goal to have, because at the end of the day, if you're burnt out and stressed, then it doesn't really matter how good your diagnostic tools are, or at least it makes your operating of these fancy diagnostic tools worse if you just are burnt out and just not able to work to your full capacity. And so, I think what does help is that we can look at human medicine, like we said. So, what is happening in human medicine, or what has happened in human medicine, and what lessons can we take from there to make veterinary side of things faster and more efficient? Well, as we said, this administrative burden is one of the biggest and sort of most obvious things here. That, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but vets and doctors, you became a vet or a doctor to heal animals or humans. You didn't do it to write notes at 7 p.m. for 2 hours, or at least most of the vets I know don't think that that's the fun part. And yet, with these rising expectation, rising level of care, that creates this rising administrative burden, to write notes, to keep track of the cases. And it's not just notes, but reports and all kinds of, yeah, admin work that takes a lot of time and it drains energy. It's not what you signed up for in a sense. And, that's the same across vets and humans. And so what we see or saw in human medicine, are continuing to see, is that kind of the reduction in this administrative burden was the most obvious first entry point for AI. And remember, we said AI is a big range of different things. But that reduction in administrative burden was kind of the low-hanging fruit. And that's, I think, for a couple reasons. One, it's a huge pain point for most vets. And number two is it is AI in the sense that it's using AI to, let's say, write your notes and reports, but this part is not using AI for sort of diagnostic support, clinical decision-making support. And basically it's safer in that way, right? Because you're not, the AI doesn't have to be as for this particular part, um, that it's writing your notes and then you can check the notes. So it's sort of safer and easier to implement when you're talking about important things like, healthcare, whether it's human or animals. And so it, in a sense, has a high reward with a lower risk. And that's the perfect way. And this is what I mean, this is really played out. You can, we can see this in human medicine, is it's that perfect entry point for, I'd say, most practitioners. When you say, I want to start using AI or I want to get more, what does that actually mean? Well, practically, a scribe is a very obvious starting point because it's kind of low risk and it just cuts out a lot of that part of work you don't want to do, the note writing. Then, of course, it can branch out from there. And I mean, this is where the explosion, in technology is happening right now, that it can spread into tons of different things, into actual clinical, as the AIs get better, they can do all sorts of different things. And as we see some examples here, imaging is a big one. General decision-making support is a big one. And the fact that it all runs off of, a 5G network or a 4G network or any kind of network means that the availability becomes, so much more widespread than, a physical machine. It's a lot easier to get an AI system across the world than it is to get ultrasound machines or other big physical expensive machines. And in human medicine, we have actual studies that really show the power of these tools. And this is now we're scoping back to the AI. And yeah, I mean, you can see it right here, the 15% reduction um, in note writing time. And I think even more powerful is this reduction in burnout with just 30 days, by the way, of using a scribe. And I mean, burnout uh, I mean, yeah, that'll make everything worse if you're burnt out to the point of not even working. And yeah, so, if we talk about, what does actually AI mean and how can you do it practically? Well, a scribe, just to sort of hammer the point home here, a scribe is a really good way to start. It's easy, it's simple, low risk with big, big benefits. And this is just, the stats here are lifted straight from a very similar profession. Then just for a few other examples, and I'm sure everyone in this room has seen or heard of other examples of AI in healthcare. Um, and you will see more and more of these every day if you even with just a quick Google search. And some are good, some are not good. Of course, with any new explosion, um, there's going to be a lot of just yeah a lot of new stuff, and of course not everything will be great, and then so that's part of what we're trying to do is what is good and what isn't, and particularly what is good and what makes sense for specific regions, right? Something that's good for Paris might not be good for Dubai, for example, and this is something that we work with a lot. What makes sense for particular parts of the world. And it's not um, it's not sort of it's not magic that the tools that make it are easy to follow this path, easy, like if we take the scribe, that it's easy to validate. It writes your notes, you check it, you make some examples, and then you can put it into your electronic record keeping system and it works. It's easy to integrate it with other tools and these other things here. Um, and so I think are easy to that just it makes it simpler than trying to evaluate tricky diagnostic tools where if you have imaging, for example, you can have human specialists that can disagree on imaging results. And so then if you have an AI that comes in and gives recommendations and one specialist likes it, but the other one doesn't like it, is the AI wrong? Is it right? It's really hard to, it becomes much more difficult to sort of measure and assess how good something like that is, as opposed to, again, these kind of more simple administrative tools. And so, yeah, let's jump into veterinary AI. We are all vets here. We don't want to spend too much time on the boring humans. And basically, what we're seeing is that veterinary AI is following a very similar path. Surprise, surprise, except we're just earlier in the pathway than the human. Although, like I said, that sort of human medicine to veterinary medicine gap is vastly reduced. We're talking months versus years, and than, with any other kind of physical technology. But once again, we are seeing the scribes as by far the sort of earliest adoption for exactly the same reasons, of course. It's the low-hanging fruit. It does the work that nobody likes to do. It's low risk because you can just check the notes, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Even if it writes the notes 90% correctly, great. Then you have to change 10%, but you've now spent 10% of the time. Um, and and the technology behind it isn't as difficult as other tools. It's much easier to have a model that records and transcribes audio than it is to have a model that looks at X-rays and provides accurate X-ray diagnostics. And for sure, all across the world, this is getting backed up by the stats. These types of studies are just starting to come in. So, if you look for really hardcore studies and numbers on AI in veterinary medicine, scribes in AI in veterinary medicine, you won't see a lot because again, it's happening so quickly. And of course, really, high level studies take time. Research, this kind of stuff takes time. Um, but yeah, we have some stats here from some sources here. You can see down below, some very reputable sources that really shows that many, many vets around the world are starting to use and trust scribes. And one of the most recent stats, I'm not even sure if I have it in this presentation, is that a very recent, really big study that's come out of the States says that as of a month ago, I believe, that 47% of vets in the States and Canada are using an AI scribe tool, some kind of scribing tool. And again, just to be clear, when we say a scribe, what do we mean by that? That means it's a tool that is recording spoken conversation, whether it's conversation between a vet and a pet owner or a vet and a farmer, or it could be the vet dictating, speaking in, but it's recording that conversation, transcribing that conversation into text, and then using an AI model to turn that raw text, that raw transcription into some kind of documentation. And it can be all sorts of different things. Your clinical notes, your ultrasound report, surgery report. I mean, anything. Here it can be anything. Client communication. But yeah, so should have mentioned that earlier, but that's what we mean when we say a scribe. And yeah, that 47% of vets in somewhere like the US. And, that's of course the US. The US is not the rest of the world. For example, my main base is here in Dubai. Here in Dubai, I'd say it's about maybe 5, maybe 10% of vets. Many, many vets here have not even really seen or heard of scribes. But I guarantee you it's coming because it's just so obvious, right? Again, nobody likes to write notes. And if you have this technology in the palm of your hand, wherever you are, it's pretty hard to give it up once you've had a taste. Again, getting to eat lunch more often, getting home to eat dinner with your family is a pretty nice carrot to have there. Um, but obviously, when we talk about a scribe, it is, here we're not even close to talking about AI as a replacement. This big scary kind of thing you hear everywhere that the AI is going to come and take all your jobs. I think we're very far away from that right now, and certainly something like a scribe is not even close to doing that. It's writing your notes for you. It's like having a really nice, a really dutiful sort of assistant next to you. It's just writing your notes. And I mean, to be clear, none of the AI tools we have right now, by the way, are anywhere close to replacing veterinary judgment. There's way too much. Um, there's way too much really specific veterinary knowledge that goes into assessing a whole case, not just looking at some text. I don't know if we'll ever have tools that can replace it, or if by the time we have those kind of tools, we'll all be slaves to the machines anyway. So maybe don't have to worry about that. But so practically, and we're getting close to finishing up here. But so practically, if you or your practice or your company is looking to sort of implement AI, how does one do that in an effective manner, in an efficient? And yeah, number one is sort of repeating what we've said here. We do want to use tools that are not affecting, of course, your clinical judgment. And again, that's why the low-hanging fruit is these ones that aren't even touching your clinical judgment. They're just making your administrative work easier or reducing it. Certainly, you do want to speak to vendors, speak to clients. A big question we get is, do pet owners, do they worry that you're recording your consultation? And my answer to this is always, if you look at this call we're in now, there's probably about 3 different AI note takers in here. And I'm pretty sure anyone who really has any kind of video calls is not at this point used to AI note takers being in the call. And that's really exactly what the AI scribes are. They're an AI note taker. They record just like the note takers in this call right now. They're recording the call. They will create a transcript, and then they will summarize that transcript based on the preferences of the moderators. And that's exactly what an AI scribe is doing as well. And certainly you want tools or platforms that fit your workflow. I think this goes a little bit without saying that. And like I said, there is a lot of stuff out there, and there will only be more and more and more as it gets easier and the tools get more and more impactful. So it becomes, in a sense, easier and easier to build tools that are more and more impactful. But yeah, every vet is different. Every vet has a different workflow, a different style. And particularly, I'm sure the people in this room right now, you don't all, of course, you don't all work in the same way. And yeah, not all the tools are the same. So it does pay to be able to sort of research a bit. And I think that's really what Know Vet Family with Vet Connect is trying to do, is just try to sort of sift through a little bit of the stuff that's out there in the world and bring together a more cohesive and high level and applicable set of solutions that make sense for your specific markets, in Africa. And, just like any other tool, by the way, a CT machine or an ultrasound machine or a surgical scalpel, you can use a tool incorrectly and it can cause problems, even at administrative. A common issue we see even with a scribe is just sort of having it generate the notes and just blindly copy pasting the notes without looking at them. I would not suggest doing that. They are getting better and better, but of course you want to check the work. And so I think I view, whether it's an AI scribe or really any other software, AI or not, I view them as a tool like any other tool, like any other physical tool. And just like you want to educate yourself, and you might have even a learning curve to learn how to use a tool and to use it safely and to use it effectively, it's exactly the same with any kind of digital tool, and particularly with AI tools. I think particularly this learning curve part, that some of them, depending on what they are, it's not just a pick up and go. You might need to spend some time, but the payoff can be enormous. And like we said, what Know Vet Family is doing, we are both building and partnering with companies across the globe to, to put together, in a sense, a portfolio or even information on veterinary tools, veterinary AI tools or digital tools, AI or not. It's not just AI tools. And then partnering with local leaders like Vet Connect to come up with, I guess, to make sure that we're delivering items, again, that make sense for the regions. that we're in. So we're not trying to just take something from the US and bring it here without a second thought. And so, yeah, tomorrow, I'd love to see everyone there. We can have a quick look at Vetify Pro, which is our sort of three-in-one scribe, clinical support, and client communication. And for sure, after that, anyone who wishes can have a trial of it as well. But yeah, I'll discuss that in more detail tomorrow. So, okay, here's my information. You'll also be getting this presentation um, from the organizers, either at the end of the day or at the end of the event tomorrow. And so, yeah, once again, I just wanted to thank everyone for being here today. I wanted to thank VetConnect and the moderators for having me speak. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to see what the other speakers have to say. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you very much, everyone, and back to the